Armed security units patrol Sabratha, an unwanted site for human smugglers and the end of the road for the migrants themselves. Such patrols by Libyan and Italian coastguards have led to a drastic reduction in migrant numbers crossing into Italy.
We undertook 2 workshops in this area and warned the locals of the dangers of migrants ending up settling here. And the human traffickers were convinced.
Sabratha became a departure point for migrants about 6 years ago as Libya descended into anarchy. This followed the toppling of President Muammar Gaddafi.
We told them to either stop migrating or we use force. This was a powerful message to smugglers. It worked in a positive way.
The Libyan government is now planning to construct a holding area for migrants to trace their way back to their home countries as their journeys and dreams go up in smoke at this point.
10,000 people were destined to be smuggled to Italian and Southern European shores. But with the cooperation from the anti-Islamic State group Operations Room and locals from the surrounding areas, human traffickers and smugglers surrendered the migrants to the Operations Room.
Libyan officials say that some traffickers have tried to adopt a new image to cover up their past as they cooperate with authorities now. Jane Kale, CGTN.
So then let's dig deeper into the context of the story. Kevin Uzbek joins us live from Brussels now with more. Kevin, let's go back to July. Libyan and Italian authorities back then were working on a deal of some sorts to stem the flow of migrants across the Mediterranean. So how will this work in practice today?
Well, back in the summer months, the Libyan Coast Guard was requesting naval assistance from Italy. Now, Italy was long ready to jump in with its naval vessels to help the Libyan Coast Guard patrol the Mediterranean waters to try to cut down on the number of migrants making that very dangerous journey from Libya to Italy. For a long time, there was a lot of resistance in Tripoli to allow the Italian Navy to help them out. But that ended up changing, and this summer Italian naval vessels did go there. And on top of that, Italy has been helping to train the Libyan Coast Guard. We've also seen part of this plan including making it harder for NGO rescue boats to go out there into the Mediterranean. All of this is designed to really curb those numbers of migrants making that very perilous journey. And we've seen this summer, at least part of it, work. Numbers drastically are down, which you wouldn't think would typically happen in the summer because that's when weather conditions are more favorable for migrants to make that journey. But then there's also been these reports in the Italian press that Italian officials have made these deals with who, according to some of the reports, are known human traffickers to get them to stop. So we're also hearing calls from NGOs to stop this, what they call essentially penning in these economic migrants, penning them in to these detention centers, these holding centers, where reportedly conditions are quite nasty.
Indeed. We'll get to the economic migrants question in just a moment, but there was a very strong military element to the plan that was proposed originally back in July. So with this deal that we're talking about now, will the Italian Navy finally have access to Libyan territorial waters? And if so, what are the rules of engagement if they run across, say, a smuggler's boat carrying migrants across the Med?
Well, yes, Italian naval ships have been allowed in Libyan waters, and we've seen even the pictures of the Italian naval vessels docked along the Libyan coast. These vessels, when they now intercept migrant boats, as long as they're in Libyan waters, they're returned back to Libya. And that again comes from a lot of the criticism from NGOs. They're saying these migrants are being kept in just deplorable conditions right now. So there's been really a number of things that have been all happening here, a number of sides here, a number of entities trying to stop this migration crisis. We've talked about really specifically what Italy is doing. The EU this summer has also been funneling more money to the countries of origin, countries like Nigeria, other African countries, in order to try to boost the economies of that country so there's no incentive for people to leave in the first place. We've also heard Brussels call out a number of countries where people are leaving to get to Libya. They're not just African countries. Some of them come from Asia as well, because with this EU-Turkey deal, that Eastern Mediterranean migration route has essentially been cut off. Really, the main illegal migration route to Europe right now is via Libya into Italy. So the EU has been trying to boost the economies of the source of the problem.
Indeed. So one last question for you, Kevin. Given everything that is being done, let's focus on what Jean-Claude Juncker mentioned earlier today, who was quoted as saying that any migrants who don't qualify for refugee protection, i.e. essentially economic migrants, need to be sent back. But what measures is he proposing to achieve that?
Well, during his State of the Union address that happened in Strasbourg today, he really just talked about big picture things. The specifics are to come later down the road, and they're going to have to be all then flushed out in front of the European Parliament as well as the European Commission. But he said right now only about 38% of economic migrants in Europe are being sent back. He says that number really has to greatly increase. He says Europe will always be a safe haven and a home for those fleeing war and those who are refugees who fit in that classification, but they just can't support all these economic migrants. So he says really going forward, there's going to have to be greater partnership with the African continent. It's also possible that the EU could work on more deals very similar to that EU-Turkey deal that basically involves the EU giving billions in aid to Turkey in order for them to host these migrants. It's possible that individual deals with individual African countries like that EU-Turkey deal could be down the road.
Indeed. We'll leave it there for the time being. Thank you for the update. That's Kevin Osbeck there live in Brussels.